My name's Steve Cox. I actually work with these two people. Basically, they're going to talk about SharePoint, the institution of SharePoint that we've got. I'll introduce them both first. The gentleman here is Adnan. He is a systems analyst with IT Client Support Services, working closely with Simco Hall, us, and the senior admin staff within. He's been working with SharePoint, products and technologies, and his concentration is within SharePoint management and architecture. He's very passionate about sharing knowledge, and his knowledge he will share with you in today's TKF demo. Ash, over there, is our network administrator, also within Simco Hall. Again, within ITS Client Support Services, he provides business solutions to our senior execs and management within Simco Hall and other affiliated units within the area. He developed several solutions based on SharePoint technologies, which are in use today and very successful. Specifically, Dublin Council, BPUR, and all the other top brass that we care to mention. He's a graduate of the Faculty of Information, has applied his information management knowledge to practical solutions. I'll hand you over to him now. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. As Steve mentioned, that's Adnan and I am Ash Arokiswamy. We are both IT professionals with good experience with Microsoft technologies, and we are both passionate about knowledge management and applying SharePoint as a tool for use by offices. So this is the agenda. So we hope to complete it by 11:10, and we also hope to finish by around 11, so we have around 10 minutes for questions. That's a rough estimate of the timeline. So a quick audience poll: how many people have heard about SharePoint but haven't really seen a site? Can we have a poll of hands? So there's quite a bit. So we thought what we would do is we would start our presentation with a quick demo on how a site actually looks like and take it from there. So what we did is we actually have, we did this PowerPoint presentation on a SharePoint site, so we thought we'll just use that site to showcase how a site looks like and how we actually use it in a team environment. So for this demo also, we would like to use two common problems. It's the issue that people have with multiple versions of documents. So usually what happens is people email documents back and forth, and then after some time, even in a small team of 4 to 5 people, you end up with so many versions and you really don't know which one is the right version, which one has all the changes and the most current version. The other issue that people always have is to retrieve the information they seek, and search is always a problem area. So we'll come back to this requirements process later on in the demo. So this demo is about minor and major versions in SharePoint.
Ash, every time you move, your mic is going in and out.
One more. And so I'll show the SharePoint search functionality in this demo. So this site is what we use for our PowerPoint presentation and for this TechKnowFile project. As you can see, this is a standard site, and it's meant to have some announcements. There's a library where we share documents, and we have some tasks that we have to do. The PowerPoint file in particular that we used here is the one that Adnan has highlighted. And as you can see, this morning at around 9:30 is when we last touched it. So if you click on this thing and go to version history, you will see all these minor versions, and then we do have major versions. So between us, we don't have to email the PowerPoint back and forth. So we don't have to email the PowerPoint file back and forth. We just email the file, and he can add his corrections to it. And because we are using this thing called minor versions, it just goes 1.1, 1.10, and then at some point we decide to make it into a major draft, and it becomes a major version of the file, so 1.0. And there's a lot of other things you can do. You can delete versions and make a minor version and all that. So this shows the version history in SharePoint. If you want to search for a document, then you'll see this bar on the top right, and you just type in keywords that you want to search, and what SharePoint does is it will search the file name, and it will be able to look inside Office documents, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and you have to add some PDF things to SharePoint site, and then it will index PDFs too. So when we search for TKF 2014, this is the results we get. Another search would be for a word inside a document, like a word would be like trucker. So if you go back to the other one, TKF 2014, on the left-hand side, you have all the other information that may be relevant to your search results. So that's a quick introduction for seeing what a SharePoint site looks like and how in an environment like ours we use it. So that's a quick and easy introduction to SharePoint. So what exactly is SharePoint? So it's a term that we hear a lot nowadays, and it means different things to different people. Some users really don't like using it because it has been enforced as a new system in addition to all these other systems that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. We find that it can be a very useful knowledge management tool if it's designed properly. So what we mean by that is you have to consider the role of your users in a SharePoint implementation. So why use SharePoint and not a simple website? You could have something else to do it. What this does is we generally use a website to view content. We don't really create content inside a website. With SharePoint, you get to interact, you get to create content, and this may actually cause some hesitation in user adoption when a SharePoint site is introduced, because usually we are not used to interacting inside Internet Explorer or a web browser. It's usually to read content, so we have to see that change happen. So with this, I'll pass the presentation to Adnan so he can talk about some requirements for SharePoint.
Hello everyone, my name is Adnan and I'm going to talk about a few hardware and software requirements of SharePoint. SharePoint is actually a front end and it's fairly lightweighted. The real work that actually happens in SharePoint is in the back end. So the minimum software requirement is 8 gigs of RAM, 80 gig of hard drive and 64-bit processor. The main part is the software requirements. This, as you see on the board, you need a server, you need IIS, and you need a .NET framework. The most important part here is your SQL database, because SharePoint is going to constantly talk to your database and it's going to store everything in your database. So before you start designing or thinking of SharePoint, you want files. Okay, I'm going to pass this on to my colleague.
We are a little close to the timeline, so we'd like to move a little faster. So what exactly is knowledge? It's a quick Google search gives this description of knowledge, and it's kind of difficult to explain. We have this pyramid here that talks about data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. Usually we find all these IT projects deal with data and information, but I think with SharePoint and all these new systems coming on, it's mostly with knowledge, and what we mean by knowledge is it's what's inside our minds. It's very difficult to get at without our support. Anybody know who this person is? So that's Peter Drucker, and he is supposed to have coined this word, knowledge worker, as opposed to the factory worker in the industrial age. So he, in the 50s, came up with this concept that society would move from manufacturing into this knowledge economies where people would be the assets for organizations. So I think here at Rockman, the former dean, Roger Martin, he also talks about a decision factory versus an office, that people are involved constantly in projects, and the way work happens today is very different from how we were doing it in the past. So to summarize, knowledge is abstract. It is what we know, it is in our minds. We know more than we can tell. By its very nature, it's impossible to obtain or manage without the user's cooperation. So what we mean by this is, you can implement a SharePoint project, an information systems project, but the adoption and the design and everything has to factor in the people who are going to use it. If they don't have buy-in, if they are not involved right from the initiation and the planning stage of your project, at the end you're going to find that adoption may not be that simple. So we find that we have to seek our users' help in designing the site. We like to work with them to identify what the requirements are, talk to them to find where exactly they have the pain points today, what the problems are, and then we try to design SharePoint to address those requirements. Simple requirements are good, a handful is good, 1 or 2, maybe 3, and then you can grow from there with your user support. So we will now create a new farm, and this is the work that happens in order to see the site that you saw in the first demo.
So what we are going to do now, I'm going to quickly run through the entire process of running the prereqs, preparing the server, and then finally